Okay, I noticed on this Model 12 Gallery Special, before I sent it back to my buddy, that he had a crack in the stock. So I just kind of lightly set this little screwdriver right down here in a spot that was already, like, had been chipped out years ago. And I'm just using pressure, hydraulic pressure, to squeeze that glue into that crack, and then we're going to clamp it up. And it's also goes, you can see right here on the bottom. So I'm going to fill both those up with tight bond, and then we're going to clamp it, probably just with like some rubber tubing, wrap it around there, and let that glue set up, and we'll keep that crack in that stock from getting any bigger. All right, you see that good squeeze out we got along that crack where I got it clamped? So we got really good penetration on that glue. I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up, and we'll let her set up. Even got some good squeeze out along that crack too, which is good because that was very tiny, but it did go all the way through the wood right there at the tang, so the tang from the trigger. We got some good squeeze out on that small one right there, which is good because I didn't know if we were going to get any, because that was a very fine crack, but it is all the way through the wood right there at where the trigger guard stops. Okay, so once I got a lot of that squeeze out by clamping it and getting it in the right place, I actually wrapped it in rubber bands that are looped together in the end. Now, a lot of times you can use surgical tubing for this, but you need to be aware that surgical tubing sometimes reacts with different shellacs and lacquers and differently. Very rarely does a rubber band ever cause any problems with the old finish, because rubber bands have been refined through the years, but surgical tubing can react, so be careful doing this trick. But it clamps it from all sides around so that you get a good even clamping. All right, also something else, when we went to function check this old Model 12 Gallery Special, we first time we loaded it up, we came to the last 2 rounds and had a malfunction, and so it took us a second to unload the gun, but we got it unloaded, and I took the magazine tube out. We loaded about 4 more in there, did the first 2 just perfect, and then malfunctioned again. So I knew it was something toward the end of the magazine. Now, if that happens, if you're having problems just toward the end of the magazine tube, you need to check your magazine tube. Look here, this spring has taken a set. Look. See that? That shouldn't do that. That should be under spring pressure. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop this little drift pin right here on the brass tube. I'm going to take this magazine spring out, and I'm going to give a little bit of stretch to it. We're going to see if we can't find one that's comparable, or maybe a reproduction for this rifle. I don't know. We'll have to see. But so whenever you're experiencing malfunctions toward the end of your capacity in any magazine fed gun, you need to look at the magazine, because that's where many of your problems will lie. Okay, so I just took this out, drifted out that little pin there, and of course it was under 0 spring pressure. Do y'all see what's happened? You see that? Spring hasn't taken that much of a set. What has happened is the spring has broken and collapsed in on itself. So we are going to have to find a new magazine spring, and I'm going to hop on the internet right now and see if I can find one. So, back with you today. Finally got the last part in for this old Model 12 Gallery Special. for some of you that may know, we were done with the rifle, and I handed it to Brian. I said, here, take this and shoot some 22 shorts through it and see how it runs. So immediately he snatched it out of my hand, grabs some 22 ammo, goes out to our little shooting test spot, and it hangs up on him. Fires really good for about 3 rounds and then hangs up. So he brings it back. I said, did he shoot? He says, no. I says, what happened? Where did it stop? He said, I don't know. I just was afraid to try and mess around with it since it's a rim fire. I didn't want it firing. So he actually had the pump, the action opened partially and couldn't close it. So I slid the feeding tube out just, far enough to drop a few shells in. And after clearing the last 2 shells that were in there, and went out and shot, and same thing. Got down to 2 shells. It hung up on me. Then I decided to take this all the way out of the gun, and I noticed, look, you have that much spring that's not doing anything. So obviously that wasn't going to work. So I opened it up thinking, hey, after all these years, spring's probably taken a set. I may be able to stretch it out and make it work until I can get a new one in. Well, when I took the loading tube apart, it was actually, the spring was broken. And it was not only broken, it was collapsed in on itself about 4 inches. So definitely was not going to feed properly. So immediately hopped on, started looking for a new tube spring. We got one today. Now what I am going to show you is, how to determine. Most of these springs that you get nowadays, they're universal. So you have to cut them to the length of whatever you're working on. So a lot of people will say, well, that's no problem. You put it up against the old spring. Well, what if the old spring has taken a set? Okay. Look down here. Let me move the coffee cup and the empty Dr. Pepper can. If you will notice, here we have the old broken magazine spring. Now I want you to notice how much closer the coils are together on this one. Okay, right there I'm starting to stretch them a little bit. So we'll say 1/8 of an inch between coils. Look at this new one. About 1.5, or I'm sorry, 0.151. So you're talking, my gosh, while it may not seem like a big difference to you, in percentage wise of spring, this old one is probably taking a pretty good set. So what we need to do, since that's about 30 thousandths more, that would be, let me see, 1, 2, 3, that'd be about 1/5. So if you took the total length of this and added 1/5, I'm going to say probably about right here. And y'all, there's no science to this. You're just trying to see how much this one may have taken a set. and to allow this one a little extra length to take a set eventually, because eventually it will take a set. So you saw how I did it. I measured that this was about 1/8 of an inch between coils, and this one was 0.15. So 25, 30 thousandths bigger on this spring that's brand new. So in the overall length, I figured because this was a difference of this by about 1/5, the overall length, let's add a fifth to it. This thing appears to be, 15 inches long. Divide that by 5, that's 3 inches. So we're just going to add about 3 inches to the length of that. Just, it's going to work just fine, trust me. You just got to remember when you're measuring these springs to remember that this one has probably taken a set long before it ever broke. All right, we're going to cut this. We're going to put it back in. And I'm going to call my buddy come get his rifle.